What is going on, guys? It is WrestleMania here, back with another video. You know what, not too long ago we looked at some of WWE's Forgotten Fails. Things like Radio WWF and the In Your House giveaway. Don't think WCW gets a pass just because they've been out of business since 2001, and most of these are actually before the Russo era. Don't expect to see popular ones like David Arquette's championship run, Hogan vs Warrior Part 2, the Shockmaster's debut, the Finger Poke of Doom, or Bret Hart's run, as they're seen as well-known fails. No, on this list is some real crap that you may have overlooked. Also, don't expect any fails in merchandise, as we have an entire video dedicated to the worst WCW merchandise. So without any further delay, here is 15 forgotten fails in WCW. Number 1. PN News. Wrestling and rapping have a sordid history dating back to the infamous Wrestle Rock Rumble, where 60-year-old wrestler Vern Gagne rapped in a promotional music video alongside some of the other wrestlers in the American Wrestling Association to promote an AWA supercard. Trust me, it's horrendous. Getting back to the subject at hand, PN News was WCW's idea of a rapper turned wrestler. The only problem was News's rapping was questionable, and there was no question that he couldn't wrestle. In fact, after debuting in 1991, News feuded with Stunning Steve Austin. That changed after PN News botched his finisher, the Broken Record, injuring the wrestler known as the Angel of Death, sidelining the Angel for nearly a year. Any push PN News had was gone, and he was gone from WCW after working there for just less than a year. Number 2. WCW on the dating game. In today's day and age of mutant STDs and Bill Cosby brand roofie coladas, the idea of a woman going on a game show and choosing from 3 unknown men for a date may seem ridiculous as the idea of TNA still being in business today. The concept though was simple. 3 contestants sat behind a screen while a man or a woman asked the 3 members of the opposite sex some ridiculous questions to determine their love match. Now, imagine that, only with wrestlers as possible dates. One segment had Billy Kidman, Disco Inferno and Chris Jericho as prospective dates for a lucky lady, while the other featured 3 of the Nitro Girls, including the future Mrs. Shawn Michaels, as potential dates for a lucky lad. Their segments were painful to watch, with the male wannabe boasting he was an amateur animator. One of his questions to the 3 Nitro Girls was, "Bachelorette number 1, forget the International House of Pancakes, I'm gonna take you to the International House of Bachelorettes. How would I order you for breakfast?" Nitro Girl Che answered, "A chocolate chip waffle with strawberries and whipped cream and nuts and gummy bears and Skittles and about 27 other things." While the future Mrs. Shawn Michaels gave the vanilla answer of, "A tall stack of pancakes." The creepy cartoon guy would eventually pick Che, while Chris Jericho went on the lucky ladies list. No word if he put her in the Lion Tamer that night. Number 3. The Scheme Gene Deathline. 1-900 numbers rose to success in the 1980s, initially as a way to vote on poll, such as the infamous Death in the Family Batman storyline, where comic fans voted on whether or not Robin died. Naturally, the sex industry soon horned in, charging extravagant rates for customers to have phone sex or other steamy conversations. Wrestling companies got in on the profits too, offering professional wrestling content such as news, trivia, or other comments from various wrestlers. For example, the Hulk Hogan line cost $1.49 the first minute and 99 cents for every additional minute. Not surprisingly, the WCW had their own hotline, including Mean Gene Okerlund, who promised exclusive wrestling news. Normally what happened was a fan would call and wait several minutes before hearing any news, racking up the phone bill and getting little in return. As bad as the hotline was, it got downright ghoulish when Mean Gene announced a former world champion had passed away. The wrestler turned out to be former AWA World Tag Team Champion Crusher Jerry Blackwell, leading some to wonder if WCW had any ethics when it came to cash. Number 4. The Nitro Girls. Grill-themed restaurants have been and continue to be popular throughout the world. Las Vegas boasts many, and during the Monday Night War, the Excalibur Hotel served as a home of the WCW-themed Nitro Grill, with menu selections like the Booker T-Bone Steak, Broken Rib Black Eye, Flying Filet, and Chocolate Power Bomb. It's no wonder the restaurant only lasted from May 1999 to September 2000. Number 5. Vampiro's Poison Blood. Vampiro had a great look and gimmick when he worked in WCW, particularly during his feud with fellow painted wrestler Sting. Vampiro utilized a secret weapon where blood would fall from the ceiling onto his opponent, incapacitating them thanks to some sort of unknown power. Of course, this was during the Vince Russo era, so it was a novelty that quickly became a cliche. Things got downright funny when WCW's effects team botched the bloodbath repeatedly. In one case, Kevin Nash was standing in the ring when he received a couple of drops of blood, more akin to a birdbath than a bloodbath. Wrestler Juventud Guerrera began laughing on camera at the disaster, and you can bet there were thousands watching at home doing the same. In another match, Vince Russo wrestled Ric Flair in a cage when Ric Flair locked Russo in a figure 4 leg lock. The blood was supposed to pour down, but Flair only got a trickle, ruining what was supposed to be Russo's escape from the hold. Eventually, the blood poured out, but by then the fans were too busy laughing to care. Number 6. Captain Mike Rotunda. Tally-ho, chaps! Sometime between the meaningless runs as the US Express, the Varsity Club, and Irwin R. Shyster, Mike Rotunda had the glorious role of Captain Mike Rotunda, a seafaring wrestler with a crew consisting of Norman the Lunatic and Abdullah the Butcher. Thankfully, WCW immortalized Rotunda's return in t-shirt form, a tribute to his moment of glory. Number 7. The WCW Junkyard Invitational Match. The popularity of hardcore wrestling saw a desperate WCW book its first ever Junkyard Invitational match at 1999's Bash at the Beach pay-per-view. The rules were simple. Wrestlers competed in a junkyard to see who the first wrestler would be to escape over the junkyard's fence. However, WCW made the insane move of holding the match in a real junkyard, complete with real weapons and other dangerous objects. Any excitement generated by the potentially real-life carnage was ruined by WCW having one cameraman on the ground and another in the air, which provided little help. While no one was killed, despite a terribly timed explosion and wrestler tossing a car down, several wrestlers were legitimately injured. Fit Finlay won the match, getting a crappy-looking Junkyard Invitational trophy. In true WCW fashion, the match wasn't advertised, so no one knew about it until they started watching the pay-per-view. Number 8. WCW's $50,000 for an ad. A company books a career-threatening match with 15 of its top stars and fails to advertise it. It should come as no surprise then that the same company paid $50 grand for an ad promoting Monday Night Nitro, only for the ad to appear 3 days after the show. Number 9. Sting vs Vampiro match. Sting vs Vampiro was one of the few highlights during WCW's dying days. Sadly, their Inferno match at 2000's Great American Bash saw Sting set on fire and plummet 40 feet to what the announcer sold as his doom, and in tasteless fashion tried to emulate the tone of when Owen Hart fell to his death, which happened just a year earlier. Number 10. Gary Spivey? After his partnership Pretty Wonderful ended with Paul Roma, Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff found life wasn't so wonderful when he began a losing streak, including losing to the Ultimate Warrior ripoff, the Renegade. Don't worry, we'll get to him. With life on the losing side, Orndorff turned to psychic Gary Spivey, no relation to Dan Spivey as far as we know. Spivey would help Orndorff regain his confidence, and Mr. Wonderful was back, sporting a hand mirror he brought to ringside. However, when Orndorff's mirror broke, his problems resurfaced. Number 11. Drunk Scott Hall. Nothing screams ratings like presenting one of your performers with a well-known alcohol problem as a drunk on the air. Hall must have gone to the Method School of Acting, as he took to his role by allegedly drinking heavily before going in front of the camera. Number 12. WCW Special Forces. As Corporal Kirshner proved in the 1980s WWF, there's only one Sergeant Slaughter. No matter how many times WCW tried to create their own Special Forces wrestler, things failed miserably, whether it was WCW Special Forces team of Firebreaker Chip and Chris Champion, singles wrestler Ranger Ross, or singles wrestler Sergeant Craig Pittman. WCW bookers should have dropped down and given 50 push-ups every time they paraded one of these guys in the ring. Number 13. The Dynamic Dudes. Wrestlers Johnny Ace, aka WWE Bigwig John Laurinaitis, and the franchise Shane Douglas had the embarrassing gimmick of two skateboarding babyfaces known as the Dynamic Dudes. Incredibly, both men's careers survived this terrible gimmick. Number 14. The Renegade. As we've seen, WCW had no problem bringing in friends and enemies of Hulk Hogan in their bid to recreate the magic of Hogan's WWF run. When Hulk Hogan promised an ultimate surprise for his match against Vader at the uncensored pay-per-view, some fans were fooled when they saw a silhouette of a man with long hair and tassels. Regrettably, the long hair and tassels were not attached to the Ultimate Warrior, but to a muscular wrestler named Rick Wilson. That didn't stop him from mimicking the Warrior's mannerisms and matches. Wilson received a good push as the Renegade, defeating Arn Anderson for the World Television title and defending the belt over the summer until the Ultimate Warrior appeared in a wrestling magazine, dispelling any misguided beliefs about the Renegade's identity. The Renegade's push disappeared and he jobbed his way down the ladder until his release in 1998. Sadly, Rick Wilson killed himself in 1999 at the age of 33. And number 15, the Kiss Demon. As the joke goes, the rock group Kiss has released everything but good music during their career. 1998 was no exception when Kiss agreed to license their likeness to 4 wrestlers who would represent Kiss's various personas. The first wrestler would be known as the Kiss Demon, based on Gene Simmons' stage character. Simmons negotiated that the Demon would appear in main event matches, a wise move so the Kiss wrestler wouldn't become a jobber. However, when Eric Bischoff lost power in WCW, the Kiss Demon was put in special main events, which were anything but, and the Demon became a jobber to the stars. Kiss did manage to squeeze $500,000 out of WCW for playing during an episode of Nitro, a move that made Eric Bischoff look even worse when it became one of the show's lowest rated segments. Well guys, that wraps up the video here. I hope you enjoyed 15 forgotten fails in WCW. Please check out my other videos on the recommended tab on your right side. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.